Good. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this AmChemU webinar on diversity and inclusion at the workplace in the era of COVID-19. My name is Emilie Bertolini. I am the Senior Policy Advisor at AmChemU, and I have the pleasure to lead our organization's work on diversity and inclusion. I'd also perhaps like to welcome you on behalf of the leadership of AmChemU and more specifically our CEO, Susan Danger, who is really our first supporter when it comes to our organization's initiatives around diversity and inclusion, and who is also listening to us this morning. So before I pass on to our moderator, Anna, I'd like to just say a few words about AmChemU for those of you who may not know us. So AmChemU stands for American Chamber of Commerce to the EU. We're a Brussels-based organization representing over 150 American companies committed to and invested in Europe. As an organization, we really strive to strengthen the transatlantic relationship and to build a stronger and more united Europe. AmChemU also happens to be one of the most active trade associations in Brussels on diversity and inclusion. Our initiatives date back to a few years ago when the first Gender Initiatives Task Force was founded. This task force is now, since January 2020, the Diversity and Inclusion Task Force. So this group of very committed members has a sort of a twofold objective. The first one is to really establish a platform for our member companies to have a dialogue and to share best practices on how to build a more diverse workplace. And secondly, we also aim to bring this discussion outside the boundaries of our organization and to really engage with stakeholders, such as decision makers and civil society actors, to really, in a very collaborative approach, also work towards promoting the issue of diversity and inclusion on the public agenda. And so obviously when the outbreak of this COVID-19 happened, we found ourselves with our members discussing about obviously the huge implication that this crisis has on the way that we work and on the concept of workplace as a whole. And so we thought it would be interesting to have a discussion about also the implications of all this for diversity and inclusion, and to bring together a few experts from our member companies to really discuss the challenges that have come with this crisis, but also perhaps the opportunities that could come about. So this is really a bit of the context of why we're here today. And with this, I would like to give the floor to our moderator today, Anna Alexandra Koch. Anna is a recruitment and leadership consultant. She is one of the most active, really, representatives on the diversity and inclusion scene in Brussels. And she also sits in the board of directors of Professional Women International Brussels. So very happy to have you here today, Anna, and all of the speakers. And I'll just give you the floor to introduce the speakers and start the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emily. It's a pleasure to be here. Indeed, I work a lot around talent and skills for the future, including working with both individual and corporate clients on developing a change mindset that can help us in times like this when we are dealing with definitely unprecedented changes. And these are definitely unprecedented times. As has been said, the ongoing COVID-19 crisis has impacted the working environment globally. And as home working and homeschooling are becoming the new norm, rather than the exception, I think it is particularly important to reflect around what the impact of this is on us as individuals, on employees, but also on organizations and more broadly on the society. And I'm very happy to be here with our great speakers today to discuss what the impact is from the perspective of diversity and inclusion, and to hear your voices and your reflections, as well as impressions and experiences brought from your different companies. I think that the discussion can go in many different directions. The impact we have been seeing is very broad and very wide on different aspects of our lives. So I'm very much looking forward to the conversation. I'm very happy and very proud to have here with me today Vanessa Newton, who's the HR Operations Manager and Diversity and Inclusion Lead for UK at MSD. Welcome, Vanessa. As well as Leah Lundstedt, Head of Diversity and Inclusion Consulting and Principal Consultant at Mercer. Hello, Leah. Veronica Quercia, Head of Talent Development and CNH Industrial. Hello. And Linda Aiello, Executive Vice President, Employee Success at Salesforce. Hello. Just to introduce a little bit the plan for today. We have about an hour and 15 minutes for the whole session. I would like to ask each one of our guest speakers to start with some reflections for about 4 or 5 minutes about key challenges that you've been facing during this crisis. And then I really would like to kick off the Q&A to also engage our audience. I definitely have already a list of some questions, but I encourage our participants to reflect as the speakers will be sharing their initial thoughts, to also share their questions in the chat box, and they will be brought to the discussion and conversation. I would want also to finish picking up on what Emily also mentioned at the beginning, with maybe on a positive note, with a reflection around what can be a key learning or a key opportunity that we see in this current situation. For your information as well, this session is being recorded. We will be also sharing thoughts on social media, and we hope that as this conversation will definitely be a very interesting exchange, that we can also continue this conversation later on offline and through different social media. So without further ado, I'll pass on the floor to my guest speakers. Would you like to start, Vanessa? I think you're still muted, Vanessa.
I'll try again.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Is that good? Okay. So good morning, everybody. Delighted to be here. I'm representing MSD, or Merck Sharp and Dohmer, and I'm here in the UK today. So I'll share some reflections on my experience of MSD, the organisation, how it's responded during the recent crisis. So to start with, MSD researches, develops, manufactures and markets drugs, medicines, vaccines for human health and animal health. So I think in the UK, we have very different types of businesses. We have research laboratories, we have manufacturing plants, we have a head office, we have a sales force. So I think the first challenge we experienced was how to support all of our employees, recognizing that they are in very different situations. Their workplaces are very different and they're impacted very differently. How can we support employees, treat all our employees fairly, and maintain a fair and consistent, equitable approach, recognizing they're in so many different situations? 1,600 employees. How can we support your individual situation, but still keep an equitable approach across all of our employee base? I think from the aspect of gender diversity, I was asked, has it impacted female, male employees differently? Personally, from my perspective, I would say I haven't observed significant different impact. I have seen examples of both male and female employees, also very senior leaders, juggling childcare, home responsibilities and work life. We have met the children of our male senior leaders on video conferences, as well as the children of and pets of our female senior leaders. So I think that's been very positive in many ways. I think it's the individual personal situation, personal and family situation, that has had a more significant impact on the individual and how they are experiencing and coping with the situation, more so than gender, from my perspective. I've also been asked, has mental health been a consideration? given that everybody's in a different circumstance, everybody's impacted differently, responds differently. Absolutely. I think mental health and mental well-being has been a key focus of our communications during this time, promoting our network of trained mental health first aiders in the UK. These are trained employees who are there to talk to if you feel you just want to have a chat with somebody confidentially. Also promoting our employee assistance programs and resources, but also as an organisation really encouraging employees to take annual leave, to take vacation. Okay, we're not going anywhere, but we have stressed the importance of being off, taking time off and having a rest. I would also say I definitely do see opportunities. Yes, it's very challenging for some of the reasons outlined, but specifically for diversity and inclusion, I see some opportunities, probably we all do, for flexible working going forward. It's really expanded our concept of how flexible can flexible working be. So maybe we'll be more open to consider different approaches. Maybe we'll be more open to ask for different approaches. Maybe we move away from the concept more of, do you need part-time hours, or do you just need to flex your hours in the day? I see opportunities for individual development. Workloads have fluctuated, some impacted with more work, some employees with less. We've developed a flexible resourcing tool to help flow people to the work. So we're encouraging employees to take on short-term responsibilities, expand their skills and experience outside of their core. So it is a development opportunity in some ways. I have to say this is set against the context of a business that is continuing to operate. We are not putting staff on leave of absence because we need to continue producing medicines. I also think it's massive boost to our digital skills capability. So definitely we've all improved, but specifically for diversity and inclusion, we've seen a 200% plus increase in the use of our internal social media platforms. So for employee engagement, that's been really positive. More employees are connecting with each other more often. And that's great for a culture of inclusion, and I hope that will stay. We also asked our employees to respond to a survey about the opportunities. What can we learn from this time? So we launched that last week. Tell us what lessons we should take forward into the future. And I think maybe on that note of opportunities, in terms of our diversity and inclusion strategy, it's really centered around activity from our employee resource groups, Women's Network, LGBTQ+ Alliance. Those activities have definitely continued, but obviously we've had to switch to virtual online delivery. But one thing I wanted to end on, the thought that has struck me more is, I think it's even more important in these times to lead inclusively. And I think leaders have really seen the need and the benefit to do that on an individual level, to connect with each of their team members. And I feel that employees are a lot more able to bring their full selves to work. We can express who we are. We've all had to be very open about who we have in our team here. And I think it's actually been a fantastic opportunity to develop more authentic relationships. We can really be our full selves at work. And I hope that is a lasting positive impact of the coronavirus. So there are some thoughts from my side.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. I think you have touched upon on so many interesting points already, and I'm sure that our following three speakers will also pick up on many of them, starting from mental health, but really talking about both the impact on the personal level that touches employees and us all as human beings, but also how organizations can then take this forward and build on that. Very interesting to see as well how you're dealing with the different levels in a way and different types of workforce indeed that you have in place. Maybe Linda, would you like to reflect on what the impact has been for you, and Salesforce being a company that is operating greatly digitally and in a way already having meetings essentially happening through video conferencing calls and so on. Have you seen any specific impact yourself? What has been sort of your key thoughts as you're going through this crisis?
Sure, and I'll share a little bit on that and also sort of what we're doing in our response as well. But yes, we were well equipped already to come into this and to work in a different way. And even for me personally, I lead a team that's a global team. I'm used to being on the road 85% of the time. The only thing that's strange is that we travel a lot and we're all sitting at home at this point in time, but this interface is not an unusual one for us. And we have the opportunity to actually help other organizations in this. So to give you some context, we're a 55,000 person company. Our primary focus is cloud computing. We began really focusing on customer relationship management, and we have a full suite of products that really encompass all of the aspects that bring a business closer to their customer. So it's actually a great moment for us to actually add value for our customers in this moment. When I think about our response, and I've been working on the COVID response for us since the 21st of January, which is when it first started to hit in APAC. The first thing we did was we actually went back to our values. And our number one value is trust. And within that, there's an element that touches the customers, but also in terms of our employees. So with that piece, it's talking about how we take care of our employees. And that allows our employees to take care of our customers, which leads to our second value, which is customer success. And with this, we actually went back and we did what we call a V2 MOM, which is how we create goals for the year. So it stands for vision, values, methods, obstacles, and metrics. And we wrote a V2 MOM for our COVID-19 response, and it's available for all of our employees to see. And one of the most important things that's in there is that the number one method on the V2 MOM is around health and safety first. So it's actually very visibly telling people, documented, that the most important guiding principle within that is to prioritize the health, the well-being, the safety of themselves, their families, their loved ones, et cetera. So it allows, a parent to understand that they can take the time to focus on their family, their child. They may be taking care of someone who's ill or elderly, et cetera. For me, I don't have any children, so I can also prioritize my own health and well-being during this time and take time throughout the course of the day to stop, to get on my Peloton, to take a shower, and to get back at it. So that was a critical piece. But then the next thing we realized, and we didn't perfectly get this right the first time, but it's around the communication piece. And when things were happening and the situation was evolving, we were communicating as something was happening to our employees. And then it became a moment where people were waiting for what's that next thing. So we moved to actually communicating with our employees, and we communicate through our marketing cloud tool, so we can actually see what people click into, click through. We communicate every day so that our employees actually have one central place to go to. And this is to take anxiety off of them. So it's one trusted source, and making sure that we wanted to have this very transparent place for people to go to and know that the information is accurate, reliable, up to date. And we really thought about sort of all of the elements that have to lead through this. So we started a weekly all hands call with all of our leadership. So all of our top exec leaders, our CEO and his directs, are on a video call once a week with all of us. Team members can ask questions through our internal chat tool called Chatter, and people can vote them up. So questions get asked to our leadership team from things like, what are you doing about childcare? And we actually have backup childcare that we've made available to all of our employees globally. where it's possible. We've extended, leave times for parents. We, of course, have stepped up the message around productivity and flexibility. And then also people ask, oh, hey, what's that statue that's in the corner of Mark's office? So going back to Vanessa, where you see into each other's homes, you're actually able to have this moment where you see things. And it's really interesting because there's a level of equality that happens, I think, on video calls when we all have these grids and we can see everyone. Everyone has an equal share of voice at that point in time. So it's not around sitting at the table and who's talking most and everyone is guided there. Everyone is in front of you. Everyone is on an equal playing ground. So that's become a really wonderful, wonderful thing to see. And then we couple some of our communications with very localized things and individual things. And we've also put people on employee journeys. So things that they can opt into or things that we're putting people into. So, we're very focused on mental well-being. It's a very critical piece of our culture as well. So we have a 30-day mindfulness journey as well that people can opt into. We extended we have a relationship with the Plum Village monks through a meditation app that people can do at home, which is a really wonderful thing. And then we're, like Vanessa, we're surveying our individual employees and we're collecting information constantly to feed it back into our content. So we can see where the themes are and what people are worried about, what's stressing them out, what's creating challenges for them, and make sure that we're nimble and quickly responding to what those things are. And we have daily speakers on, and we broadcast it twice a day. And it started out just for our employees, and they loved it so much they asked if our customers could come in our communities. And again, we had a wonderful Dr. Kim Norman do a great session on grief, because at this point in time, all of us are grieving something. We had Ariana Huffington talking about how to thrive in this environment and how to sleep. We had the epidemiologist Larry Brilliant, and then there were days where we realized we just needed a laugh and something lighter. So we had Trevor Noah on, which was fantastic. But again, to listen and respond back to what people are needing and trying to actually differentiate what each individual's journey is, because everyone is in a different place at this moment. And I think one of the key things there too is this is building a level of empathy. People are starting out their conversations with their employees saying, how are you today? How are you doing? And it's something we're not necessarily used to. And this is something I want to see come back. And we're recognizing that each person is in a certain situation that we may not know about. And that everyone is experiencing this differently. And the reality is that's how our lives are every day. Otherwise, we're just more hyper aware of it because we're all going through this together at this moment. So there are moments where I'm concerned about, balance of workload on women in the household, especially in certain countries, but then I realize that there are many benefits coming out of this and thinking through how we can take this forward and what learnings we can have to make the workplace and the world a better place as we come out of this.
Thank you, Linda. Again, I think, it's extremely inspiring because you have touched upon many different points. And as I also touch back to our conversations, even from before the session, I find it extremely interesting to see how, the point that you raised, that actually having a video conference can allow greater equality, if you wish, in the exchange and in everyone having the same amount of voice. What also has been very interesting for me is how you hinted to the fact that you have been observing how the current crisis has been evolving globally across different countries, because obviously being present across the globe, you kind of had a possibility to have a look into it. And then you spoke as well about the way that leadership act in these situations. And that's maybe where I would also want to ask Veronica to contribute and share her remarks. We were also talking a lot about how the current situation in a way is a call for a new leadership paradigm. And maybe that can also reflect in your remarks and presentation, Veronica.
Yes, thank you, Anna. Hi, good morning, everybody. So CNH Industrial is a capital goods company. And as Vanessa said, we have many different type of workforces, starting from our 67 plants. So 45,000 people, blue collar in the plants. Then we have Salesforce. We have, I mean, a variety of situations that, of course, since the beginning, we try to address tailoring, let me say, the measure and the reaction that was prompt in CNH Industrial, as I'm happy to hear in all the other companies. At the beginning, of course, we react promptly, giving the priority of the safety of our people. But at the same time, we also looked at the broader community we lived in. So we have been in touch since the beginning with our suppliers, with our customers, with our dealer networks, in a sort of, let me say, togetherness, because on the other side, if the priority number one, of course, is the safety and health of the people, on the other hand, we have also a responsibility in the business continuity. And that was a point that we immediately focused and we immediately addressed by keeping all our community, let me say, together with us in these big efforts, above all at the beginning, where we addressed the emergency, to try to put into a safe situation everybody, whoever. And from this standpoint, our leadership team, starting from our CEO, immediately recognized the importance of communication. As Linda said, since the beginning, we have been very transparent with our people to let them know what was going on, what the company was, let me say, addressing the situation, the measure that the company was taking in order to protect everybody. And still now there is, again, starting from our CEO, a big involvement in keeping constantly people update, reassuring them about every step that we are taking in order to, let me say, protect them, and also looking at the business, because it's also important, I mean, to secure this condition for the return and for the ramp up moment. What I observed in this situation is a sort of paradox, because in this remote working setting we all are living, actually it seems that we are even more, let me say, driven to human touch, to the human connection. I always comment that sometimes when we organize meeting, people connect from their office without coming to the meeting room, because maybe they need to take 2 floors. And now that actually we are forced in this remote setting, we are realizing the importance of the human touch, the importance of being together, working together, also physically. And this is something that I hope will be remaining after this particular moment. And on the other hand, I think that what I observed in my company is something that is very much encouraging for the future. We have been, of course, very quick, very, let me say, speed in taking the reaction. And there was a sort of delay of the relationship. So the hierarchy was not immediately the driver for putting people on the table, but the competencies of the people, the relevant people that can contribute to the resolution of a problem, was the first, let me say, driver for organize the different committees that are taking care of the different aspects of the safety, of the business, and so on. And this agile, let me say, way of working have been even accelerated in this moment, because when you need quick reaction, quick decision, and you need, I mean, in this uncertain situation to move on, to move forward, you really need people that can, it's the subject matter of the topic, and can help in framing the right decision, right? And this is another point that I observed in the reaction in my company, that is pretty interesting and important to keep and to capitalize for the future. We were already, like all the other, working on the agile, on the digital, whatever. I mean, we all were touching this topic. I think that here we have really an opportunity to take the acceleration that this emergency phase has forced us to, and to, let me say, amplify the way we are going to come back to work in a new way, with a new normal, based on this, let me say, positive aspect that we have been observed in this situation. And last, to the point that Anna raised about the leadership, I also think that this crisis has shown us that I mean, the human being shall be, let me say, the real center, needs to be the real center in the future. I mean, compassion, empathy, understanding which are, let me say, the reaction of the people. People react differently in terms of stress, anxiety to situations that really are dangerous for their own and the beloved people around health. And I think that leaders that were already on the journey, let me say, of getting the importance to stay close and to understand and to take care of the people, again, here has an opportunity to really, let me say, I wouldn't say give up to what the leadership paradigm in the past was, so performance, results, and so on, because of course we are a company and we are here to let me say to make money, but at the same time I think that new paradigms are going to be central if we want to move forward also from a business standpoint. I really hope that we will be able, I mean, to catalyze all the positives that this COVID has shown, because if we look at this dramatic situation we're living with a positive glance and thinking about what we can carry over, maybe we can also leave behind us all the pain that we are suffering. Everybody of us across the globe is suffering.
Thank you, Veronica. And that's really to the point, you know, putting people at the center, or back at the center, the human being at the center of the conversation. It's great because it also links very nicely to what I had in mind to kind of bring in Leah to the discussion as well. I remember when we were discussing a little bit before the session, we spoke a lot about indeed the mental health aspect as well. The fact that, of course, we are all under great stress simply because of the current situation. Then we add to it what we have been discussing here already, maybe the need to take care of children and to contribute to homeschooling, or maybe also having to tackle certain tasks that each one of us has to perform at home, and so on and so forth. But we also, and I think Leah, you raised that question, is what are companies doing to help people disconnect? Because part of the problem is that staying always at home, we kind of feel, you know, it is almost impossible or very difficult to say, okay, you know, it's 6 at 7 p.m. I turn off my computer and I'm off, and to say no to some of the tasks. And another thought that I wanted to bring already to the conversation, and that is also based on our earlier exchanges, Leah, is the new leadership paradigm. Will it also bring a shift in how we observe performance metrics and how we carry out appraisals with our employees? So please share your introductory thoughts, and if you wish, please reflect on these couple of points as well.
Yes, I will. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for the other introductions. I think there are definitely some similarities across. So I work for Mercer. Mercer is part of Marsh McLennan Companies, which is a global professional services firm in the areas of risk strategy and people. We have 76,000 employees worldwide. So we are a people business, so to say. And I would say that the internal experience and focus has from the start been very much centered around empathy. So I really liked, Linda, when you were raising that point around empathy and also around authenticity. So one of the first things our global CEO, Dan Glaser, mentioned, he announced that we would not let go of any employees during the pandemic. And I thought that's both a bold but also a very strong message to send to employees. But it's also very obvious when you're in the people business that you need to make sure that people feel safe and secure in their work and in their business. And then, of course, from a business perspective, we've been focusing then on minimizing operational expenses. But we're not doing broad salary cuts, etc. We're really focusing on retaining our employees to the greatest extent possible. I also wanted to mention that we have put together a $5 million fund to support employees facing severe hardship during this period of time. So I think coming back to your question, and this was actually part of my introduction as well, is that we do acknowledge that there are strains on employees with families, but we don't as such put it into a gendered context. But we acknowledge it broadly. So in our discussions, we have meetings and meetups and calls, etc., with our CEO, also for Mercer. We do focus very much that we, first of all, respect personal circumstances, whatever it's about taking care of children or elderly, or there are other considerations. I mean, given that we are such a large company, we also do experience people who are infected, or even people who have deceased from or passed away from this infection. So we feel it as well, and we put a lot of emphasis on that into our communication. And I've also sensed, as was mentioned by our other speakers, that as a people manager, I've also seen my conversations with my direct reports turning from, normally it's maybe 90% business, how's it going, etc. But now it's like 75%, how are you doing? Do you sleep at night? How do you make it work? You know, what can we do to make life easier? I mean, we've even, with some of them, I've even, and this is just a personal anecdote, but I've even turned them into walk and talk, simply to make sure that people actually get out and move. So the aspect around social isolation, which also affects the mental health immensely, we try to take that into consideration, and I try to take that into consideration. But given that we are who we are also very client focused, and we've done a bunch of surveys with our clients and trying to understand how do they respond to this crisis from a people perspective and from a D&I perspective. So we have ongoing global surveys where we're also asking into, so how do you deal with it, working from home, flexibility, etc. And we definitely see, we're also asking questions into mental health. And we definitely do see both in their responses. We're currently doing a global survey where I think around 350 companies have responded so far. And many of them, I think about a quarter of them, are responding that yes, they do actually see that there's an increase in mental health issues amongst their employees. So they do take that into consideration. However, we also do see that a number of companies, they actually don't track data and segregate it into gender or into other D&I measures, such as LGBT or disabilities or ethnic backgrounds. So we're also putting a call out to our customers and our clients in encouraging them to segregate the data so they can actually better understand how is this affecting people differently across their organizations. Because we do also sense, even though, I mean, we are a very data-driven company, we do tons of surveys, but we still see that to some extent there is a data gap in terms of what companies, what they track. And as we also discussed, Anna, in terms of switching off, this also actually came from one of our local surveys that we conducted here in Denmark, where we asked companies, so how do you help people switching off? And I think it was, less than 5% that responded that they even consider it. So yes, a lot of companies are looking at working from home, flexibility, you can plug in, plug out whenever you want to, but not a lot of them are focusing on saying, hey, dear employee, why don't you switch off? We do not expect you to deliver 24/7, even though that you have the tools to do so. So for us, that was a bit of an eye-opener, also in terms of our own communication to employees, but definitely in terms of this whole work-life balance as well. And in terms of moving forward, I mean, we do see that there are some great opportunities, as already mentioned by my colleagues here. There are some great opportunities in continuing with a more flexible working model. I mean, we have in Mercer as well, we're used to working from home and being on the road, similar to what Linda mentioned. But we do also see that there is an opportunity to actually attract a more diverse workforce when we work more flexibly and when we're more focused on the deliveries vis-a-vis presenteeism. So that's touching a bit upon your performance-related question. I think this period of time will help us focus more on what is actually being delivered and not when or where it's delivered from.
Thank you, Leah. Very interesting. And I have already a couple of follow-up questions, but let me open maybe to the floor, let's say, then to the questions from the audience. Elizabeth is asking, can you give examples how your organizations give working parents, especially single parents, time and support they need while there is no childcare in place? I don't know if any of you would specifically like to address this question.
Yeah, I can give some examples of what we're doing. And I mentioned the backup childcare where it's available, there's actually been a very good uptake of this as well. So we're giving employees $100 a day if they can. In some places, of course, you can't have someone else in your home. We've been very clear about the flexibility and the understanding of, not only are you not expected to work 24/7, but you may not actually get your full day in. And that's understood. And we know that this will take some time. And while it can't go on forever, as things loosen up, people will have opportunities to have other care opportunities. And we know this is actually going to be the case throughout the summer in many parts of the world as well. In the US, where we're headquartered, there are a lot of kids who usually go to camp all summer, and parents are very dependent on that. And that's just not going to happen. So we've considered opportunities as well where we can actually host virtual camps for kids. So of course, once they're of a certain age, that we can do online different sessions, whether it's on coding or other pieces. There are some of our countries who've also done some really wonderful things. So our team in Italy, who was really impacted early on, as a group, they started broadcasting, and they were calling it Salesforce TV. So they were doing some pieces on customers for the adults, but then they were also taking turns actually helping and teaching each other's kids. So doing some online schooling. So they were, crowdsourcing it as it may be. But the biggest thing is this message around permission and making sure there's a very clear message on you have the permission to do this. And we're, some of our leaders are very vocal about it and also show it. So when they're on calls, their child is in the room. Sometimes their kid is on their lap with them. Someone is muted and unmuted a call during an important presentation. It's okay. This is our reality and our blended living right now, and that we have to be able to do this at this period of time. So again, there are other benefits that you can do. Not all companies have the financial means to offer a lot of different benefits, but even without any additional funds, these are some of the ideas I think you can take away with you.
Great, thank you very much. And that what is interesting as well is to see how the community feeling gets reinforced as well, with people kind of pooling in resources to then help, even if digitally, one another. Thank you, Linda. A question from Natalie to Leah. What would be the tips and tricks for supporting employees in switching off? So to the last point.
Yes, great question. So I think it's important to emphasize the managerial relationship is key here. So of course you need to stay in touch with your employees and get a feel for where they are and how they're doing. And there's a lot you can pick up, especially if you do video calls, in terms of how do people actually look? Do they look like they have taken a shower? Do they put on makeup? Do they sit in their morning gown when you interact with them? So I think a response will always have to be individualistic. Having said that, what we have discussed is so we have done a lot of managerial training in this, sending them information and encouraging them to connect. We're also encouraging people to take time off, to take holidays, also to take half days off if we can see that they've been online. We're also encouraging people to update their outlooks or their Outlook calendars, because then you're actually communicating to the rest of the team, I'm not available. And we're even encouraging, with flexibility in mind, that you can do that during the day as well. So if you need to go for a run, if you need to look after your children, if you need to pick them up or whatever it is, then just mark in your calendar you're not available, and that's completely fine. So those are some tricks, that we are giving people. But I think essentially it's a matter of managers being closely connected, having more frequent one-on-ones with the teams and then verbally encouraging it.
Thank you, Leah. I think obviously, it's extreme. It's not an easy task, but it is true that it's a lot about creating that connection and staying attuned also to people's needs. There are two questions that I think are somewhat related. One is again from Natalie, and it reads: how do you tackle the issue of impacted employees based on their functions, such as the Salesforce team who is not able to be in the field? And then Susan, who addresses the question to Vanessa, and I know that Vanessa has a great example to share there as well, so I kind of want to group them in. How are you dealing with opportunities for development and assessing where there is more work, less work, change in work? How are you dealing with this concretely? And then I think that in a way, the question relates to all our speakers. So if you maybe want to start, Vanessa and Linda, and then if you would like to chip in as well, Veronica and Leah, please go on.
Okay. So specifically on the question of development and assessing where there is work and where there isn't. So we have a task force of leadership that got together to specifically focus on that. So the feedback from each of the leaders from their groups was put together, and what they did was create a flexible resourcing tool. We had something similar already there and we adapted it, and what we're doing is areas that have opportunities or need help are posting gigs, so short-term projects or requests for help. And if you have capacity, so this is then shared with all of the employees in the company. If you have capacity, you can respond to the gig and put yourself forward. And obviously there's a link to the manager to make sure that's supported and it's in line with your development and current capacity. But yes, so we have a flexible resourcing tool, and we have COVID-19 gigs to help balance the workload in different areas. So that can be shared across all the divisions and in the company and all the sites.
I love that idea, Vanessa. That sounds great. I'm going to follow up with you on that, because I think, again, that's something we can take forward. That's not just in this time.
Yeah. Well, actually, it was something that one of our diversity networks, our Next Generation Network, looks at intergenerational working. They had developed a sort of kind of gig tool for shorter term agile developments. You don't have to change role, you can do something alongside. So we've really adapted that and switched its focus, and it's been really helpful.
Excellent. And then answering on the piece around, what we're doing around our people who are, normally visiting customers, I think there are a few things here. First of all, the reality is all of our customers are at home too. So we're adapting. What we've seen over the past 8 weeks, we can't unsee, by the way, this preconceived notion that things cannot be done digitally or can't be done remotely, where you have to be on site at a customer, whether that's the customer's perception or our own. we're making it happen in this way. So we are offering digital visits. I've actually had meetings with a lot of customers talking about our response to COVID, the tools that we offer, et cetera. And I think there are two other things that we've really done. And one is thinking about how our enablement is different. Actually, I'm going to name three things. One is how our enablement is different. How do we enable our sales employees, so our account executives, to approach this differently, and realizing that it is a different approach, it is a different touch, to be mindful also and not tone deaf to sort of what's going on with customers right now. So not to be overly pushy, but to think about where we can offer support. So I think that was key. We also packaged together a new product called work.com. And this is for companies to think about, it's tools that maybe they already have, or it's pieces that they could pick up around getting their employees back to work and productive, and even thinking through when they're getting people back into an office, because that's going to be quite complex. That's a whole other webinar we could have. And these tools actually help companies on this. So that's actually a piece that then our AEs can go into customers and say, well, actually, we have something that can help you get through this, help you expedite and get you back to productivity as quickly as possible. And the other piece is thinking how our executive leadership can reach out to many, because we are at a moment where it's one-to-many in our customers as well. We have the opportunity digitally to do this. So we host a session every week called Leading Through Change, where one of our top executives comes on and has a CEO from another company talking about what they're doing. And this is also gathering interest for our AEs and helping build opportunities for them as well. So realizing that they're not going to be able to do their work in the same way. So how can we as a company create those opportunities for them?
Thank you. Veronica, we discussed as well when we briefed before the session. It would be interesting to hear from your perspective, because obviously, as you also mentioned, you have people in the manufacturing line, but you also have Salesforce people that normally are out there. How are you dealing with that?
Of course, the kind of, let me say, approach is different when we talk about our people in the plants or our sales force. We in CNH Industrial have, let me say, tried to reorganize the return, because many plants are going to reopen. Some of them already reopened, some other, we are very spread geographically. And what I saw very actively been doing by the leadership team in the different plants is really to try to tailor according to the protocols, of course, of CNH Industrial in terms of safety and protection, but also aligning with the local legislation, the local regulation. They have been working in order to pull up, let me say, really clear instruction through videos, through a lot of different things to enable all the population, the blue collar especially, coming back in the facilities, in the plants, and observe all the new things that have been implemented, like the temperature check in the country where it is, let me say, provided through the protocols, and so on. And it was very interesting to see, the participation of the leadership team of each plants that proactively worked on maybe also self-made video, self-made material, but with the heart at the end of the story. Maybe the output is not sophisticated so much in some cases, but it's authentic, and it's really clear, talking and addressing the needs of clarity, information that the people coming back at work shall have. So in this moment in the company, we are also starting reimaging the future, reimagine the new normal, because as I was saying before, each of us are experiencing different positive things that can be catalyzed for the future to be turned into structural, let me say, change, not emergency change as we are. And to the point of Vanessa, we are working in creating project teams that can address all the different streams that really we need to reflect on, to work on, and to understand how to, let me say, reframe or shape it for the future. And all of this in the light of the digital acceleration that we all are living. And of course, we were already working on this digital literacy in order to, let me say, enable all the people in the company. And we were thinking about programs that can put closer the old generation with the youngest generation in a sort of, let me say, mentoring exchange, right? Maybe the old generation can teach through the experience why the youngest one can help the other colleagues in getting more familiar with the digital tools and so on. And so this is something that we are reshaped according to the lesson learned through the crisis and through the emergency. But again, it's important to bring in the table in this team the right competencies, and above all, the people who are really engaged in giving their contribution. So it will be important for us, and for me, especially in my job of talent development, to make possible to people to speak up and to make available for being part of this project team that we are building up for reimaging our future.
I think just on the sales force, I think to build on the points some of the other speakers raised, we have to think differently about the sales targets, the sales bonus. So we have communicated to the sales force, we get that, we understand that, we are taking that into account. We don't really know what the solution will exactly look like yet, but we understand. So we want to take some of that anxiety from them, that the pressure to perform to the pre-COVID target is not there. And we understand that they have to re-engage with their customers and understand what are the customer priorities now, what are the customer needs, because they are in many cases very different.
Thank you, Vanessa. We have also a question from Christina, and there I'm sure that Leah can also share interesting thoughts, both from your company, but also the client that you work with. What opportunities do you see for women in the workforce that have been negatively impacted by the crisis by losing their positions in traditionally female-dominated industries, example, hospitality or in corporate administrative roles that may not come back due to economic impact? Does this crisis represent an opportunity to reskill? And how realistic do you think that is? Is there something that you think policymakers can do to help? Maybe Leah, you can kick off with the answer. And I again think this is probably a question where everyone can have an interesting insight as well to share.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. No, I mean, both internally, we do have a strong focus on reskilling as well, and upskilling and learning, so to say. So we are encouraging employees to learn new skills, so we can easier move them to other areas of work within Mercer and within MMC. But we definitely also see that with our clients, but also from a policy perspective, that there are huge opportunities around reskilling. There are both opportunities. Well, there are also opportunities in terms of workforce composition as such in different organizations. So if an organization, due to the course of this pandemic, are considering to reduce their workforce, then take a gender perspective on it and see how can you reduce, so you actually give opportunities to others, similar to when you build up your organization and try to attract people with different and diverse backgrounds. So we definitely see some opportunities there. We also see it in terms of flexibility. So I know this doesn't speak into the physical service jobs, but it definitely speaks into the frontline service jobs, such as customer service, online customer service functions, which we do have some of in Mercer. We also have a lot of them amongst our clients, where when you pick up the phone or you do a video call with customers, you could do that from different locations. So you can replicate the situation we're in today, and you can allow that flexibility, which would have a positive impact both on women, because we see there's a majority of women in those jobs, but also to other minorities which may not have a long academic background, but which are more at a global scale represented in those types of jobs. So we definitely do actually see quite a lot of opportunities there at a global level.
Thank you, Leah. I don't know if any one of you would like to add something or maybe share a particular experience, example of how you deal with that, or if you have experienced that. I think the platform that Vanessa was mentioning is probably also an example of how that could be used, or at least a solution that could be implemented in order to help a number of employees reskill and develop new skills, maybe already start jumping on certain new courses or joining some projects and learn even on the go a number of new skills. But of course, that would then need to be adapted to specific solutions.
I think maybe a very general point that everybody has, I think, shown they can adapt to very different ways of working very quickly. And I hope that would give every individual some confidence that they can adapt going forward, that they are resilient. They've got great examples to share of how, even if unfortunately it resulted in losing employment, they've got through that. You know, they have survived the situation. That's a great strength and a great achievement. And don't forget that.
And for us, we have a lot of learning content for our employees that we have all the time, because again, in terms of digital, how can you self-learn? How can you continue to reskill and upskill? So we have a great learning platform called Trailhead that we use internally. It's also available externally. And we've really encouraged our employees that during this time to take the time where they have it to become Trailhead Rangers, to earn a certain amount of badges and amount of points to upskill. And it's a really unique time too, because when we think about the future of work, we know that there will be a need for us to continue to upskill and reskill employees. If we think about our marketing team, for example, we were a heavily events-based organization, and now suddenly everything is digital. So the competencies that people have, how can we quickly move them forward? And some of this is through that. Some of it is through, this is experience. When you think about learning and development, it's education, experience, and exposure. This is experience on steroids, which makes up sort of 70% of someone's learning. So giving that opportunity, and also within that, giving opportunity and making sure people know we have permission to fail and iterate. Because there's this, oh my gosh, I have to do something completely different. I'm probably not fully skilled. And what if I fail? There's a different level of concern. We have the same no layoff pledge to our employees, but yet, people are not going to be able to perform maybe at the same level because it's a completely different world and environment. So again, that notice of innovate and think about how to do that, but also having some permission and then having some tools behind to support them as well.
And I
Thank you, Linda.
Anna, that on top of the rescaling in terms of hard competencies, I also think that it's important now to equip our people with the soft skill necessary to face the VUCA world, to make them comfortable in managing uncertainties, in managing their stress, their anxiety. And to this perspective, we have yesterday launched in our company program an on-learning path called Go the Distance, giving the possibility to all around the globe through our learning platform to take courses to equip them really with this soft skill that we think are important in this very moment from an emotional standpoint, to face the situation, the uncertainty, the volatility, the fact that every day something might happen, and we shall be ready from, let me say, an emotional standpoint to face whatever is going to come.
Indeed, and Christina also comments here in the chat box, the platform for constant reskilling sounds like a proactive solution and reminder that we can prepare ahead for the need to be agile and move into new roles. Really like that concept, and that she really loves the embracing the possibility of failure if it means you are growing, innovating. I think from the perspective of how we can indeed work with our workforce to ensure that people fear a little bit less changes, and change is the new constant essentially in today's world. it feels like indeed maybe already a first takeaway on the positive side that we can take out of this crisis is to actually make sure that we implement, if we don't yet have, solutions in our organizations and companies to ensure people keep learning, keep reskilling and upskilling, and that it becomes essentially part of the process on a daily basis rather than an exception or a feeling that you are then forced into training because otherwise you will be fired or laid off, right?
Exactly. Sorry. I think it's just it's along the lines. It's important to continue to acknowledge that the situation is changing as well. And I think the leadership in MMC and Mercer has also been quite open in saying, look, we don't know what the future looks like for certain. We assume that we will not be, more than 30-40% people in the office before the end of the year. So, so we all have to be flexible. We all have to stay flexible. But we also do acknowledge that there are different circumstances. And I think, continuing to communicate that, not just from manager to direct report, but from an organizational perspective as well, is also giving some certainty in terms of okay, yes, we're in this together, and let's redefine the future together and adapt to it along the way.
Absolutely. And it feels like we've discussed, on the one hand, of course, there has to be a balance, because in making sure that the learning experience, or that the experience of learning, is a constant part of your growth and employee journey, takes a little bit off the pressure. And in times like these, with some of you, we were discussing as well, it's sometimes about also letting people know it's okay to take time where you do not jump on a new course to learn new things. You do not become a wonderful, baker. You do not necessarily have to learn 20 new things during that time just because you're spending more time at home. And then it just becomes essentially part of your day-to-day. You learn and you grow without the extra pressure put on you. I'm being mindful of the time, and I think we could have that conversation still for a very, very long time. But maybe I would ask all of you, and each one of you, to reflect in your closing remarks on, whether you think that the change will stay with us, or will we go back to business as usual in how we knew it pre-COVID? And also, what kind of learning or key opportunity do you see for us in taking from this current situation and making sure we move on stronger and we find ourselves in a better place after the crisis? Would you like to start, Vanessa?
Yes, I think I probably mentioned them in my introduction, to be honest, but I echo the thoughts of the other speakers in that human is at the center. The authentic leadership, authentic relationships, really connecting with individuals on an individual level. So I think from a diversity point of view, that is the thing I hope will stay, because I think it's become a habit, as we've mentioned. I think that how are you? Also, I think it is helping people to be more open about mental health challenges, because it's okay not to be coping, or I don't know if you've heard the term, the corona coaster. This roller coaster of emotions has impacted, as other speakers have said, everybody. So I think it's going to help us be a lot more open about mental health challenges in future as well. So I think authentic relationships, being open about mental health challenges. I do think the digital capability will stay. And I hope the kind of informal engagement, as I was mentioning about the social media channels, employees feeling they have something to contribute, they have something to give. You don't actually have to be part of an organized diversity group to share your thoughts or opinions or connect, put an idea forward. I think that informal contribution to the inclusive culture, I hope that will stay.
Thank you. Veronica, would you like to continue, pick up on this?
Yes. I think that it's our responsibility really not to forget what we are learning. I know that in this period we are still, let me say, emotionally involved, and maybe each of us has goodwill to do things and so on. We need to be sure that goodwill will turn into, let me say, an action. Really, I mean, there will be a risk because we are sure that we will be facing a different world. Like it or not, something, let me say, will definitely change after this disruption. And the tendency of the people maybe will be to come back to the old way of doing, because I agree with the colleagues when they say that we all demonstrated to adapt easily to the situation. And now we adapted to the emergency situation. Then there will be, thanks God, a stabilization, I hope soon, of this situation. And that will be the right moment, really, to keep insisting on carry over what the positive things that we have experienced are, and work hard in order to turn this into structural, let me say, changes, a structural way of doing. So there will be a momentum, in my opinion, where as leaders in our company, we will need to engage all the people and to stay together to what can be better compared to the past, in terms of engaging the people, in terms of setting relationship on trust, because nowadays, I mean, each shall necessary trust on others, right? In this setting we are working on. This trust shall stay there. And I mean, it will be very important for the leaders to drive this moment of consolidation and really shift into something new.
Thank you, Veronica. Leah, would you like to share your closing remarks?
Yes, I would love to share my closing remarks. I think a lot of it has already been mentioned by Vanessa and Veronica, but I think, I mean, continue to lead with empathy, because that is, in our perspective, that is key to D&I, and that is key to creating an inclusive culture in an organization. It's actually to understand who do you have in your organization, and what are their needs. And then, of course, our call for curiosity on data and on how this, not only this pandemic, but also other initiatives, how they affect different employees and their experience of being part of your organization. I mean, I hope, we hope that companies will take a more data-based approach moving forward, and actually understanding the different employee experiences in the organization, because that will both help D&I, but that will also help your company better understand your customers, who are in most cases diverse. So we hope for that, and we call for empathy in this new normal that is upon us.
Thank you, Leah. Linda,
sure. No, and I think a lot has been mentioned. This idea around empathy, around authenticity. We strive for people to be able to bring their whole selves to work every day. Well, everyone is bringing their whole selves to work every day, whether we like it or not. And really thinking about how we embrace this, how we embed this in our ways of working as we go forward. And the other thing I would say is, really, as the pandemic evolved, for us, the first thing we did was we went back to our core values. So always remember as an organization what your values are and what decisions you would make in that moment. So our core values are trust and equality, and really making sure our people knew that our top priority was their well-being and safety, and that everyone knows at our company they should be prioritizing this above everything else. And that doesn't change when we come out of this. We have less of a worry maybe about some of it, but we should always be doing that.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Veronica, Vanessa, and Leah. Thank you for your contributions and for sharing your experience and your thoughts. I think we've had a very interesting and engaging session. Thank you to all those who have attended for their questions and comments as well. As mentioned at the beginning, the session has been recorded, and we will also continue the conversation through social media with some comments and with sharing some of the key thoughts from our speakers. So I hope that we will be able to keep the conversation going, and we'll definitely keep an eye on the situation. Thank you very much to AmCham EU for having us and for putting this session together. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.